The Chronovisor. Father Pellegrino Renetti was a Benedictine monk, scientist and exorcist, among many other things. In the 1960s, while on a cruise with fellow Vatican priest Francois Brune, Pellegrino shared an extraordinary story. He claimed that in the 1950s, he and a team of 12 scientists built a strange device. The team allegedly included renowned physicist Enrico Fermi and Werner von Braun, the former Nazi and director of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center. The device they created was called the Chronovisor. This device, resembling a television, was made from cathode ray tubes, antennas, and other electrical components. According to Pellegrino, the Chronovisor was capable of tuning into any event from the past, based on a concept he explained. Every historical event leaves an energy imprint that floats around indefinitely. Thus, glimpsing into the past was as simple as tuning into and decoding these signals. Father Pellegrino claimed that he used the Chronovisor to witness numerous pivotal historical events, including the crucifixion of Christ, for which he allegedly took a photograph of from the device. He also claimed to have seen Cicero's speech to Rome, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and many other landmark events. Additionally, Pellegrino asserted that he had used the Chronovisor to view and transcribe the performance of the lost play Thyestes. He further stated that the device was eventually confiscated and dismantled by the Vatican, then stored in the secret Vatican archives to prevent its potential misuse for political power. Some even suggest that the Vatican still uses the device to view monumental historical moments. This story was first published in 1972 in the Italian publication La Domenica del Corriere, and later recounted in Brune's 2002 book, Le Nuovo Mystery di Vatican. However, there are several problems with Pellegrino's claims. First, the alleged photograph of Jesus he provided was actually of a statue from a church in central Italy, created by sculptor Lorenzo Valera. Other photographs connected to the story have been debunked as false, often being linked to well-known historical sources, such as paintings. The lost play Thyestes, which Pellegrino claimed to have witnessed and transcribed, has also been criticized for inconsistencies in length, language, and other aspects. Father Pellegrino maintained the validity of his claims until his death in 1994, with some reports suggesting that he later confessed on his deathbed, either admitting that the entire story was fabricated, or acknowledging that while the machine may have been real, the photographs were not. The lottery exists to catch time travelers. This theory is relatively straightforward. The true purpose of the lottery is to identify time travelers. Given the incredibly small chances of winning a jackpot, it's theorized that the lottery exists to catch anyone who somehow manages to beat these extraordinary odds. A time traveler from the future would have knowledge of past events, including winning lottery numbers, and could use this advantage to earn a quick fortune by traveling to the past and purchasing a winning ticket. The theory suggests that the government is aware of this, and created the lottery as a way to spot these temporal travelers, with the government secretly monitoring lottery winners in search of potential time travelers. Sergei Ponomarenko. In 2006, a strange man in his early 20s was spotted wandering the streets of Kiev, Ukraine, seemingly lost and mesmerized by the skyscrapers. He was dressed in oddly outdated clothes that appeared brand new, and around his neck hung an old film camera. The man approached a group of police officers, asking for directions to a street that didn't exist. Puzzled, the officers asked to see his ID, only to be shocked when he presented identification papers issued by the Soviet Union, which had been dissolved more than a decade earlier. The ID also listed a birth year of 1932, despite the man looking to be in his mid-20s. When asked what date he thought it was, he claimed it was April 23, 1958. Believing he was mentally unstable, the officers took him to a psychiatrist who listened to his story. The man, identified as Sergei, claimed he had gone for a walk in the city on a clear morning in 1958, taking several photographs, when he saw a strange, bell-shaped UFO in the sky. After photographing the UFO, he suddenly found himself walking the streets of Kiev in 2006. The psychiatrist had the film from the camera developed, discovering that this particular type of film was manufactured in 1956 and hadn't been produced since the 1970s. Upon developing the photos, the doctor found images of Kiev from the 1950s, including a clear shot of the bell-shaped UFO Sergei had described. After telling his story, Sergei mysteriously vanished, leaving behind only his camera and the photos. Further investigation revealed that a man named Sergei Ponomarenko had been reported missing in 1958. They managed to track down the woman in the photographs, who turned out to be his girlfriend, now over 70 years old. She confirmed that Sergei had disappeared for a few days in 1958, but returned, before vanishing once again in the 1970s, never to be seen again. Years after Sergei's disappearance, his girlfriend received an unusual photo in the mail, showing Sergei in front of a backdrop of Ukraine, but with buildings that didn't exist at the time. The note accompanying the photo claimed Sergei had sent it from the year 2050. While this story is circulated widely on the internet, it is ultimately a hoax. It originated from a Ukrainian TV show called Aliens, which dramatized encounters with alien abductions and other anomalous events. As such, the footage shown in the story is fictional, and there are no official records to support the events described. Additionally, the photo supposedly taken in 2050 has been clearly photoshopped, with recognizable structures such as the Empire State Building edited into the image. Astronaut time dilation. According to the principles of special relativity, as an object moves faster, specifically as it approaches the speed of light, time passes more slowly for the high-velocity object in relation to an observer moving at a slower speed. In addition to this, according to the principles of general relativity, due to gravity bending space-time, an object closer to a strong gravitational field experiences time slower than one in a weaker one. One of the most practical examples of time dilation can be observed in astronauts who spend extended periods aboard space stations orbiting the Earth, like the ISS. The high velocity of these stations relative to Earth causes a minimal time dilation effect, which accumulates over time, but only results in a difference of a few milliseconds at most, over several months. Notably, astronaut Oleg Kononenko holds the record for the most cumulative time spent in orbit, having spent 1,000 days orbiting the Earth. As a result, it's estimated that he's 0.027 seconds younger than people born at the same time as him on Earth. The Dodleston Messages. In 1984, Ken Webster was living in and renovating the Meadow Cottage in Dodleston, England, along with his girlfriend Debbie, when they began experiencing strange and unexplained activity in the house. It all started when they discovered 6-toed footprints in the dust along the walls, leading towards the ceiling, which reappeared after being painted over. Cans of cat food and various groceries were found stacked in strange pyramid and tower formations. The residents also experienced sudden cold spots, gusts of wind, and an eerie feeling of being watched, as though an invisible entity was living alongside them. But the phenomena would only get stranger. Ken worked as a teacher at a local school and had brought home a BBC microcomputer one day that he had borrowed from the school to begin using its word processor. He was surprised when a strange file appeared on the computer, one he hadn't written himself. It was an ominous and cryptic poem. Thinking it was just a prank, Ken gave it little thought and left it alone. However, this would not be the last message he would receive on the computer. Later, a new file appeared, this time written in archaic English. When translated to modern English, the message read, "I write on behalf of many. What strange words you speak. You are a worthy man who has a fanciful woman, and you live in my house, with lights which the devil makes. It was a great crime to have stolen my house. L.W." Ken and Debbie were now convinced that they were communicating with an entity or person from the past. L.W., or Lucas, continued an ongoing correspondence with them that seemed to transcend time, with Ken's colleague, English teacher Peter Trinder, acting as a translator between the two parties. Ken asked Lucas about his time, which Lucas claimed was 1521. To verify this, Ken and Debbie asked him for details about his time, such as the names of the king and queen, along with other events of the time. Lucas claimed he was a farmer whose wife and son had died in the plague of 1517. He also provided answers to questions about the king and queen, but he intentionally gave some incorrect information to test them. Lucas became outraged when they failed to catch his lies, claiming that if they were truly from the future, they would have been able to verify the facts. Lucas seemed to be able to somehow observe their surroundings, as he commented on various things in the house, including a picture of a Jaguar sports car Ken had left near the computer, saying it was a fine car, but would go nowhere without a horse. Meanwhile, Debbie began having strange dreams and visions in which she met and interacted with Lucas. Physical messages began appearing around the house, written on paper, and sometimes even on various surfaces in chalk, and the correspondence went on for some time, before it suddenly stopped. After some time without hearing from Lucas, a new message appeared, this time from a man named John. John claimed to be Lucas's friend, and explained that Lucas had been imprisoned for the crime of witchcraft. Lucas, it seemed, had his own lightbox, or a computer, through which he communicated with Ken and Debbie. Accused of talking to evil spirits, Lucas was quickly apprehended. Ken and Debbie managed to free him by communicating with the sheriff through the computer, convincing him to free Lucas. After his release, the correspondence continued, with Lucas revealing that his real name was Thomas Howerton. When Ken sent a message detailing that they were from 1985, Lucas was surprised and responded that he had thought Ken and Debbie were from the same time as their other friend, who claimed to be from 2109, and had originally given Lucas the light box. Surprised by this new revelation of another party being part of the communication, Ken tried to contact 2109 himself by leaving a message on the computer. 2109 replied with the following: "Try to understand that you three have a purpose that shall, in your lifetime, change the face of history. We, 2109, must not affect your thoughts directly, but give you some sort of guidance that will allow room for your own destiny. All we can say is that we are all part of the same God. Whatever he is. This revelation confirmed that not only had they been communicating with someone from the past, but they had also been in contact with someone from the future. It appeared that 2109 had been somehow orchestrating the entire situation. Lucas later revealed that he had received the computer from a strange being who emerged from a green light in his fireplace. Fearing that 2109 would tamper with their correspondence, Ken, Debbie, and Lucas began leaving each other messages on physical paper, communicating this way instead. The correspondence was eventually brought to an end with one final message from Lucas in 2109. In his last message, Lucas claimed that he was writing a book detailing all the events from his perspective, and he would hide it in a safe place in Oxford for it to be found in the future. After that, communications ceased. Lucas's book has yet to be found, but Ken and Debbie later wrote their own book about their experiences, titled The Vertical Plane. Despite this intriguing story, the Old English used in Lucas's message has been contested. Several Old English experts have claimed that the language is inconsistent with 16th century English. Despite this, Peter, Ken's colleague and an English teacher, was mainly impressed by the language, claiming that if it were a hoax, it would have to have been brilliantly executed. Nazi time travel coin. This hoax has been circulating on the internet since as early as 2018, or possibly even earlier. Most commonly, it appears as a photo of a faded coin, accompanied by a text claiming that in 2018, a man named Diego Avalas discovered a mysterious coin with the year 2039 imprinted on it. The coin allegedly features Nazi symbolism, including a swastika, along with the words Nueva Alemania, which translates to New Germany in Spanish. On the other side of the coin is the Nazi Iron Cross, along with the phrase Alle in einer Nation, meaning all in one nation. Along with the photo, a video was originally posted in 2018 showing the coin on a table filmed from several angles and being held by someone's hand. This sparked speculation about the nature of the coin, with some theorizing that it had somehow slipped out of an alternate universe where Germany won World War II and achieved world domination. Others suggested it might be from our timeline, depicting a future where Nazi Germany somehow returns and emerges victorious in a Third World War, a theory that ties into claims about Nazis allegedly hiding in Antarctica. Despite these wild theories, the most likely explanation is that the coin is most likely a fake prop. Paul Amadeus Dienach. In 1921, Swiss-Austrian teacher Paul Amadeus Dienach fell into a coma, which lasted for a year. During this time, Paul had been living another life. After slipping into the coma, Paul woke up to find himself in a strange hospital room, surrounded by people in unusual clothing, who were speaking a language he didn't understand. Slowly, he realized that he must be in a hospital of some kind, but initially thought he had died and gone to the afterlife. When Paul looked in a mirror, he was surprised to see another man's face looking back at him. He learned that he was not Paul Amadeus, but rather Andreas Northam, a physics professor who had been in an accident. To his shock, Paul discovered that the year was 3906 AD. Somehow, his consciousness had been transported into the body of another person, nearly 2,000 years into the future. Gazing outside, Paul saw strange futuristic skyscrapers and flying cars among a futuristic landscape. During his stay, Paul learned all he could about the future, and was given a mysterious device he described as a box that turned words into pictures. He was advised to use this box to learn as much as possible about the history leading up to the year 3906, but was warned against using it to explore anything about the 20th century. If he learned too much about the past, he might inadvertently change the timeline upon returning. Paul learned that from the year 2000 to 2300, humanity would struggle with overpopulation, international conflicts, and other challenges. Despite this, humanity would manage to colonize Mars in 2204. Within 60 years, the Mars colony would grow to a population of 22 million. However, in the year 2265, almost the entire population of the colony would be wiped out. In 2309, a devastating nuclear war would break out, decimating the human population in most of Europe and other regions, with only the Baltic and Scandinavian countries surviving. The war would end in 2396, giving rise to a corrupt one-world government. After 200 years of opposition, the government would be overthrown and replaced by a new system, run by scientists, philosophers, and visionaries. This marked the dawn of a new age, one based on adequacy rather than scarcity. People would work only for 40 years, after which they would then be supported by their communities. In 3906, when Paul had arrived, people only had to work for 2 years before pursuing any calling they desired. In the year 3000, humans began experiencing a sudden, extreme spiritual awakening, tapping into a vast reservoir of spiritual knowledge. However, the first people to experience this awakening died due to its overwhelming power. By 3382, the first man survived this enlightenment, and many others followed, marking the evolution of humanity into a higher species, Homo occidentalis novus, or the new Western man. This spiritual evolution also eradicated humanity's worst traits, greed, corruption, and other vices, which became relics of the past. With no need for laws anymore, society flourished in a new age of peace and harmony. Paul spent a year in the future before waking up from his coma in 1922. He did not tell anyone about his experience until just before his death, when he gave one of his students his personal diary, asking him to translate it as an exercise in language. The student, Georgios Papachatsios, eventually published this account. Temporal tourism. This theory suggests that the potential invention of time travel in the future could give rise to a unique form of tourism, temporal tourism. Temporal tourists would theoretically be able to visit any point in time, as easily as booking a plane ticket today, primarily to witness major historical events. This would mean that they already are, or were present at these events. While this theory falls apart when considering the lack of evidence of time travelers at any major historical events, it could be reconciled with the idea that this technology is not available to everyone, but only to a select few. These time travel trips could either be extremely expensive and limited to the wealthy, or restricted to certain groups, such as researchers or elites. Given the dangerous nature of time travel, precautions and fail-safes would likely be in place to ensure that tourists did not stand out and disrupt the timeline. Careful attention would be paid to the clothes, mannerisms, and language of the period to avoid drawing attention. Despite these measures, mistakes may still occur, and some time travelers could inadvertently reveal themselves. For example, this photograph of a man dressed in modern clothing with sunglasses and holding a small camera might actually depict a temporal tourist visiting the reopening of the South Fork Bridge in British Columbia in 1941. Similarly, the famous Charlie Chaplin time traveler clip, which shows a woman seemingly talking on a mobile phone in the background of a Charlie Chaplin movie, could also be a temporal tourist. One of the most mysterious instances is the babushka lady from the 1963 assassination of JFK. The fact that she has never been identified, along with her unusual behavior, taking photos while other witnesses sought cover, might suggest she was a temporal tourist, interested in documenting JFK's assassination firsthand. Another interesting theory related to temporal tourism concerns the Titanic. According to this theory, the Titanic did not sink due to a collision with an iceberg, but rather because of the added weight of time travelers who went back in time to witness the event. Given how monumental the sinking of the Titanic is, it's only logical that if temporal tourism existed, it would be one of the most popular destinations. The added weight from time travelers could have caused the ship to sink, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy, where the sinking's cause was in part due to people going back in time to witness it. Bow Street, Liverpool. Bow Street is a street in Liverpool, England, associated with an unusually high number of Timeslip reports. People who experience time slips while on the street often describe changes in the street itself, including the people and their manner of dress, as well as outdated stores replacing those they recognize. One such incident occurred in 1996, when an ex-police officer was walking to a bookstore when everything suddenly went quiet. He narrowly avoided being hit by a box van, which honked its horn at him. The van looked like it was straight out of the 1950s, with Kaplan's emblazoned on its side. Crossing the road, the officer was surprised to find the bookstore he was heading towards had been replaced by a shop named Cripps, which displayed outdated women's handbags and shoes. As he turned around, he noticed that the people on the street were dressed in clothing from the 1950s. He felt slightly reassured, however, when he saw a 20-year-old woman dressed in modern attire walking past him and entering Cripps. The officer followed her into the store, and to his surprise, the store transformed back into the bookstore he was familiar with. He grabbed the woman's arm and asked if she had noticed anything unusual. The woman replied that she had originally entered the shop thinking it was a new clothing store, but suddenly found herself inside a bookstore instead. It was later confirmed by others who had heard the story that a store named Cripps had indeed existed in the 1950s, at the same location the officer had seen it, along with a business called Kaplan's that also existed at the same time, matching the name on the truck that almost hit the officer. This is not the only time slip case associated with Bolt Street. Various individuals have reported similar experiences, often finding themselves transported to the 1950s or 60s, encountering stores and buildings that weren't there before. Some even claim to have slipped further back in time, with stories of people seeing the street populated by individuals wearing Victorian attire and horse-drawn carriages driving through the street. Mike Madman Marcum. In 1995, Mike Marcum, an amateur electrician from Missouri, called into Art Bell's syndicated radio show Coast to Coast AM with an unbelievable story. Marcum, later dubbed Madman Marcum, claimed to have successfully created a time machine. Using a Jacob's ladder, he had built a small device on his porch. According to Marcum, when he activated the electricity, a small circular area of distortion appeared above the machine, as if caused by high heat. When Marcum threw a screw into the device, it vanished and reappeared 2 minutes later, 2 feet away. Initially thinking it was a teleportation device, Marcum quickly realized that the screw had been moved forward in time. Its appearance away from the point where it disappeared was due to the Earth's rotation during that time. After the machine burned out, Marcum concluded that he needed much larger and sturdier transformers to increase the voltage and stabilize the device. To achieve this, he stole several transformers from the local power company, St. Joseph Light and Power, in King City, Missouri, hoping they would be enough to power his time machine. During his experiments with the new transformers, Marcum caused a local blackout, attracting the attention of authorities. He was arrested for theft and sentenced to 60 days in jail, along with probation. Marcum's story gained widespread attention after his call to the show, and he even received donations from interested parties, which allowed him to build a time machine from legally acquired parts. In 1996, Marcum called into Art Bell's show again, claiming he was only a month away from completing his second time machine. He also claimed to have sent multiple subjects, 200 animals and objects into the device, and that he was the next subject to be sent through. In 1997, Marcum allegedly disappeared, sparking speculation about his whereabouts. Various theories circulated, with some optimistically believing that the time machine had worked, while others feared he had been hurt while using it. One listener even presented a strange theory, pointing to a 1930 article about a dead man found on a California beach inside a strange metal tube, with a mobile-like device in his possession. The listener speculated that this was Marcum, who had successfully traveled to the past, but had died in the process. However, this theory was later debunked when Marcum himself called into Midnight in the Desert, Art Bell's most recent show, in 2015. He revealed that upon entering the machine, he had been transported 2 years into the future, landing 800 miles away in Fairfield, Ohio. Marcum explained that he had suffered amnesia as a side effect of the device and had lived in a homeless shelter for a while as he slowly regained his memories. Sending a message back in time through a black hole. Artist and MIT research affiliate Joe Davis has been working on sending a message to a black hole in space for over a decade. The message, however, is not intended for aliens, but rather for humans in the past. Davis's project, called Swan Song, aims to send a 1-hour-long Morse code transmission to a rotating black hole, specifically Cygnus X1, which is located 6,000 light-years away from Earth. He hopes that the signal will slingshot off the black hole's distorted edge and travel back toward Earth, reaching us at an earlier time. Realizing that the earliest period humans would be able to receive the message is 1935, Dave has designed the project around this timeline. The 1-hour Morse code transmission contains details of major disasters, catastrophes, wars, and tragedies, including the exact dates and death tolls of events such as the Holocaust, the AIDS pandemic, the Tohoku earthquake, and many others dating from 1935 to 2011. Davis hopes that with this knowledge, humanity could eventually prevent or mitigate these tragedies. One speculative theory surrounding the project is that the WOW signal, detected in the 1980s, may have been a signal successfully sent by Davis back in time, but by the time it was detected, it had become too weak to be comprehensible. Brompton Cemetery Time Machine. In a West London graveyard, specifically London's Brompton Cemetery, lies a large and imposing mausoleum that has been the subject of speculation in several popular urban legends. The most famous legend surrounding the tomb is that it contains a fully functioning time machine. The woman interred there, Hannah Cordoy, along with her 2 daughters, was a wealthy 19th century society woman who inherited her fortune from her employer, John Cordoy. Hannah Cordoy had a particular interest in Egyptology and became fascinated by the subject. She befriended Egyptologist and sculptor Joseph Bonamy, who is said to have helped design and create her mausoleum. According to legend, in studying ancient hieroglyphics, Bonamy became convinced that he had discovered the secrets of time travel. With the assistance of engineer Samuel Warner, and funded by Hannah's wealth, they allegedly created a large Egyptian-style mausoleum, adorned with hieroglyphics and strange inscriptions. Inside, they supposedly placed their time machine. Hannah died in 1849, but it wasn't until a few years later that the mausoleum was completed, and she was buried there. The legend suggests that neither Hannah nor Bonamy actually died, but instead, they successfully began using the time machine to travel across different time periods. What fuels this legend is the fact that the blueprints for the mausoleum are missing, and the key to the tomb has also disappeared, making it impossible for anyone to enter. Some even claim that the tomb is actually a teleportation device. Despite the strong claims put forward by this legend, almost no actual proof exists to support this theory. 1918 newspaper clipping confirms time travel. This 1996 article claims that a news clipping from 1918 proves the existence of time travel. The 1918 clipping titled Mystery Man Found Dead in 2-foot-long space tube features a photo of a corpse stuffed into a tube with a mobile phone placed next to it, suggesting that the man died through a journey through time. However, this article was published by Weekly World News, a satirical news outlet. Project Looking Glass. Project Looking Glass is an alleged top-secret government initiative discussed by multiple whistleblowers involved in UFO research. According to the theory, the US government has, or has had, a device since the mid-1900s called the Looking Glass. This device is said to have the ability to glimpse any place or time in history, past, present, or future, and was supposedly built using ancient Sumerian technology, reverse-engineered UFOs, or a combination of both. The Looking Glass was a large device consisting of a chair surrounded by various rotating rings, somewhat similar to the one in the movie Contact, but smaller. A subject would sit in the chair, and once activated, the device would cause the rings to spin before emitting a bright light. Those inside would then be staring through a wormhole or stargate, witnessing a specific place and point in time. Psychics were primarily used to operate this device due to their inherent abilities, which amplified its powers. By concentrating, the subject could glimpse into any time or location. It's alleged that the US government mainly used this device to explore various timelines, specifically to examine the potential outcomes of critical decisions. By focusing on a particular choice, the resulting timeline would be visible to the person inside the device. These visions were recorded and displayed on monitors, with computer servers used when things became too complex to analyze. Initially, the government used the device successfully to assess the potential consequences of major decisions and make informed choices. However, things became complicated when viewers attempted to glimpse past 2012. Some versions of the theory claim that the device could not view events beyond 2012, showing only white light. Others suggest that viewers were bombarded with images of catastrophic events, the end of the world predicted by the Mayan calendar. Various theories then emerged regarding how this catastrophe was avoided. Some claim that there was a great reset, where humanity shifted into a different timeline, erasing the memory of the previous one. Others assert that the knowledge gleaned from the looking glass was eventually used to prevent the disaster, while some proponents argue that the US government still uses the device today to inform political and military decisions. Others contend that the looking glass stopped functioning after 2012, leaving the government without it. Rudolph Fentz. In 1951, passers-by observed a strange man in the middle of New York's Times Square. The man appeared to be around 29 years old and was dressed in clothing from the late 19th century. No one saw how he had arrived, and the man seemed extremely confused and disoriented, standing in the middle of the intersection. He was eventually fatally struck by a taxi. At the morgue, the man's body was searched, and the contents surprised everyone present. Among the items found were $70 in outdated banknotes, which were a century too old, business cards with the name Rudolph Fentz, and an address on 5th Avenue, and a letter sent to that address, dated June 1876, along with other curious artifacts. Captain Hubert V. Rime, of the NYPD Missing Persons Department, attempted to identify the man, but without success. His fingerprints were not on file. No one by that name was reported missing, and the address listed was now a business. The officer then located a man named Rudolph Fentz Jr. Fentz Jr. had died, but his widow was still alive. After speaking with her, Officer Rime learned that her husband's father, Rudolph Fentz, had gone missing after taking a walk in 1876. Despite a lengthy search, no trace of him had ever been found. Rime then checked the missing persons record from 1876 and was shocked to find a man named Rudolph Fentz, whose appearance, age, and clothing exactly matched those of the body in the morgue. While this story is incredibly intriguing, it is unfortunately an urban legend. It originated as a fictional science fiction short story titled I'm Scared. Despite its fictional roots, it has been retold as fact on several occasions, earning its status as an urban legend. Battle at Hamburg Shipyard Timeslip. In 1932, news reporter J. Bernard Hutton and photographer Joachim Brand were sent to cover a story about the Hamburg shipyard in Germany. After completing their assignment, and just as they were about to leave, they heard the sounds of plane engines all around them. Looking up, they saw fighter planes filling the sky. The shipyard had suddenly transformed into a battlefield, with bombs exploding, machine guns firing, and anti-aircraft guns blasting. Black smoke filled the air, and buildings and people began collapsing all around them. Hutton and Brand barely escaped with their lives, but not before capturing a few photographs of the chaotic scene. After driving away, they looked back, only to find no evidence of the destruction and chaos they had just witnessed. When they returned, the shipyard appeared completely intact, as though nothing had happened. The newspaper was skeptical of Hutton and Brand's story, with some suggesting they might have been inebriated. The photographs they had taken of the supposed battle only showed clear blue skies, offering no indication of the violence they had described. In 1943, 11 years later, after Hutton had moved to London, he read a newspaper story that made his heart stop. The article described a successful raid by the Royal Army on the Hamburg shipyard, exactly where Hutton and Brand had been years before. The photographs in the article were identical to those they had witnessed that day. Somehow, they had seen the raid 11 years before it happened. Ghosts are humans during time slips. The nature of ghosts had generally been agreed upon throughout history, with ghosts almost universally believed to be the spirits of those who have passed away. This explanation has been widely accepted, perhaps due to questions surrounding the soul, the afterlife, and the often outdated clothing worn by ghosts in sightings. However, this explanation raises more questions than answers. If ghosts are indeed the souls or spirits of the deceased, why are they often seen wearing clothing from a different time period? This is where a different theory comes into play. According to this theory, ghosts could be individuals who have fallen out of time or experienced time slips. This theory may help explain several aspects of ghost sightings, such as the outdated clothing, peculiar movement patterns, and behaviors like going through walls or ignoring other physical objects. These occurrences might align with the original layout of a house during the time when the ghost lived. 1940s car in mint condition. It was 1969, and Elsie and his business associate Charlie were driving north along Highway 167. It was 1:30 in the afternoon when they spotted a vintage car on their right, driving incredibly slowly. Despite the car being decades old, it appeared to be in mint condition. Elsie and Charlie both expressed admiration for the car and slowed down to observe it more closely. They were surprised to see a very large license plate with the year 1940 printed on it. The plate seemed illegal, except in the case of a ceremonial vehicle. As the pair approached the passenger window, they noticed the driver, a young woman dressed in 1940s attire, unseasonably heavy for the weather, with the window rolled up. There was also a small child in the passenger seat, dressed in the same manner. While it was strange that they were wearing such outdated clothing, it was even stranger that they appeared to be dressed as if in the middle of winter, despite the weather. When they pulled up next to the car, they noticed the woman's face was filled with alarm, fear, and panic. She was looking back and forth, seemingly searching for help. Elsie shouted out to her, asking if she needed assistance, to which she replied, yes. Elsie motioned for her to pull over. As she pulled over, Elsie and Charlie stopped just on the shoulder of the highway in front of her. However, when Elsie turned to look back at her car, it had disappeared. Confused, the two men were approached by another driver who had witnessed the strange event. The driver explained that he had been driving behind the vintage car, which had pulled over. A new car had then pulled in front of it, and the vintage car had moved behind the new one, obscuring it from view. Suddenly, the vintage car disappeared, and all that remained in front of the driver was Elsie's car. The men searched the area for an hour, but found no answers. The third driver suggested they call the police, but Elsie and Charlie refused, knowing how unbelievable the story would sound. Florida Time Travel Shed. In 2024, TikTok user Alex Shell posted a video showcasing an anomalous event that took place at his Airbnb in Florida. His Ring camera captured footage of a young man entering his shed in the backyard, where he remained for hours. After contacting authorities, the shed was searched, but no evidence of anyone inside was found. The camera footage did not show the man leaving. It was as if he had disappeared into thin air. The next day, the Ring camera captured an even stranger phenomenon. The shed door opened, and an elderly man emerged. The man looked at the camera before leaving the property. Alec noticed the striking similarities between the two men, and claimed that the elderly gentleman appeared to be an older version of the man who had entered and vanished from the shed the day before. Alec theorized that the man must have been a time traveler, who entered the shed and emerged as an older version of himself. Another TikToker investigated the phenomenon, and claimed that the reverse image search of the elderly man's face revealed a similar-looking old man who had died in 2017 or 2018. The man was a Harvard graduate who had posted several blogs about time travel, and seemed generally interested in the concept. Putting the pieces together, it was assumed that this was the same man who had successfully achieved time travel via the TikToker's shed. That being said, this story could be one of many things, from a hoax to a camera malfunction.